Hello, all you Red Squadroners out there, and welcome to Undeclared Bajor.
Music, yeah.
Do, dance to the music. My name is Fletcher, about to say hello is Data.
What up?
Today we're going to discuss and review Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Season 4, Episode 12, Paradise Lost. Alternate title, Paradise Slightly Inconvenienced. As always, you can expect full spoilers up through the episode being discussed and a possible small number of minor spoilers for later in the series, but we'll keep those to an appropriate minimum. Paradise Lost originally aired on January 8th, 1996. It was written by ISB and RHW, just like last time. But this time, the story was by Ronald D. Moore.
What?
So, what's going on here? Did they need him to, come up with the end for their story, or...?
They were just like, yeah, we don't know what to do with this now. I don't know what to tell you.
So, we kind of wrote ourselves into a corner. Do you got any ideas, Ronald D. Moore?
Why don't we have everything blow up? Yeah, good plan.
So how about the Dominion invades and the show's over?
I like the one note in here. The title of this episode, much like the graffiti on the entrance to Paradise City, both take their name from the 17th century poem written by English poet John Milton, in case you weren't aware.
Right. Paradise City.
From Star Trek V.
Oh, okay.
The super crappy city from Star Trek V was Paradise City.
Right. Did I say the episode was directed by Reza Badi? I don't think so.
No, I don't think you mentioned that.
I think I would have remembered trying to pronounce his name.
This is the last episode directed by Reza Badi.
Oh, of Deep Space Nine, or?
I don't know. Of anything ever? Who knows? Definitely of Deep Space Nine. Let's see. What else is... I mean, we've had him before this, so we've probably talked about him before. I just don't remember it.
Right. He's I think he's like an old he's an old Hollywood pro.
Now that I'm reading it, yeah, he's like the $6 Million Man, Rockford Files, Incredible Hulk. Yeah, I remember that now.
He's directed some pretty solid Deep Space Nine episodes, if I remember correctly.
Let's see, he did Civil Defense.
Oh yeah,
Past Tense Part 1, Life Support, and Visionary before this one.
Okay, Civil Defense, obviously awesome.
Was he directing a lot after this, or did he retire?
Yeah, what's his deal?
Let's find out. Let me bring up his director credits. 91 director credits. Okay, so he had some stuff going after Deep Space Nine, but a couple episodes here and there, like a couple Buffy episodes. I mentioned Baywatch already. La Femme Nikita, a TV series, Mortal Kombat Conquest, which I didn't even know existed.
Yeah, I never heard of that.
Sliders, Early Edition. I remember Early Edition.
Oh yeah.
She Spies.
Guy gets the newspaper early.
And never heard of She Spies. And then something called The Way Back Home, which seems to be a movie in 2006, which is his last thing.
Okay, so, yeah, he had a little bit of a career still after this. Then another 10 years.
Just no more Star Trek.
Yeah. So in this episode, let's see. So in Sisko's office on Earth, remember Sisko has been made Chief Security Officer of Earth or whatever.
Something like that, yeah.
I gotta say his office has a great view.
Oh yeah, great office.
I would totally take that job for that office.
Very roomy too.
Oh yeah. And I love the ginormous TV that he can talk on.
Yeah, gotta have that.
But Sisko and Odo are investigating the power grid attack, which remember happened in the last episode also.
What?
Sisko finds it a little hard to believe that changelings were able to pull off such a complicated, coordinated attack.
I didn't find that hard to believe, just for the record.
Yeah, me either. Odo finds a log indicating Red Squad was beamed back to the Academy after the emergency was declared. Then a few hours later, the entire Corps of Cadets was mobilized into action. Which, I was like, well, isn't it possible they were on another assignment?
Yeah, right.
And then the emergency got declared, they got called back, and then
Like, they were doing something, so they got brought back. And then it was later decided that the cadets could be helpful. Like, the timeline
Right.
makes perfect sense.
Yeah, but Odo, he's just a suspicious man, so he was like,
Well, no, but Odo is like, oh, okay, so they're students. It makes sense that they got pulled back. It's Sisko is like, no, it doesn't make sense because this.
Right, yeah, as soon as Odo is like satisfied, Sisko is like, wait a second. In New Orleans, Joe and Jake prepare to reopen the restaurant. Jake is right where he didn't want to be, on vegetable chopping duty. So, sorry for Jake.
He spent some time in New Zealand or whatever avoiding this, so he did all he could.
Sisko calls a bully an admiral about the transporter log, and the admiral tells him to cover that up. Good that you caught that secret illegal transporter log.
This guy really should... If you're going to be part of a conspiracy, you need to know who is in the conspiracy and who is not in the conspiracy.
Exactly. He just reminded me of that guy on The Simpsons who's like, I can't tell you about that customer's secret illegal account.
Oh, I shouldn't have said it was secret. Oh, I definitely shouldn't have said it was illegal.
I shouldn't have said he was a customer.
Yeah. It's hot.
I don't know what this bullying guy's excuse is. But he's like, yeah, Admiral Layton was smart to use Red Squad to carry out his sinister plan. And Sisko just plays along. And then Odo is just standing in the corner. And he's like, Yeah,
I was like, wouldn't Odo be... I feel like... I don't know. I'm just like, this guy is really bad with securing his information, just in general.
Yeah. It's like, Odo's like, man, this guy needs an Odo to work for him. So Sisko heads back to the restaurant, where he finds his dad more willing to get tested for changelingness. So apparently the power grid attack changed his attitude.
Yep.
And then Sisko summons Nog to ask him about Red Squad. Specifically, who's in Red Squad. And then Nog is reluctant to give him this info as it's secret, which makes no sense, but whatever.
Yeah, it's secret, except that, like, later it's like, oh yeah, they're all gone. Supposedly they're on a mission or something. I'm like, so people know. Yeah,
it's secret, but everybody seems to know who they are. So, what?
Sisko has to pull his like, yeah, you seem to be under the impression I'm asking for a favor.
Right.
That's not what's happening here.
He's just like, motherfucker, give me a name.
So, do you know how many pips are on my collar right now? I'm just saying.
Right. How many are on my collar? 4. How many on your collar? 0.
But okay, since we just passed the Sisko's dad being okay with stuff, I want to hit this note where, so Rene Echevarria is talking about the episodes, and he's like, so look, this was an attempt to make the audience complicit in believing that a threat was imminent. That's the first episode basically is like this misdirect, because you've got the wormhole stuff, you've got the changeling stuff, you've got like the power grid goes out, oh no, the changelings are about to attack. So he's like, we want everyone to believe that this threat is imminent and that by any means necessary, it must be dealt with. So we go out of part 1 saying there's going to be a big battle and we're going to stop them. Martial law, yes. Clamp down on rights, yes. Blood tests, yes. No civil rights, yes. And then in part 2, we find out that the real point of the story is how dangerous that feeling is.
Huh.
And so,
okay.
He and Robert Hewitt Wolf both are quoted here. It's like, yeah, part 1 was supposed to be a big misdirect and get you feeling this one way, and then part 2 is like, you see, it's easy to like do that when you shouldn't, and you should be like thinking more about it. So that's the message.
I didn't feel especially misdirected, but
you knew what was happening, at least this time. So
yeah, I don't know. I mean, because I felt like the whole time they were still kind of resisting the whole like martial law idea. So I don't know. Cadet Shepard comes by Sisko's office, and Sisko tricks him into giving a report on his secret power grid sabotage mission. So once again, they were not given very good security discipline.
No.
Just mean, okay, look. Assume that anybody that you haven't directly seen being involved in the plot is not involved in the plot. Like,
yeah.
I mean, stick to your cell and your person you report to, or whatever.
It's like the head of planetary security must have been involved in this plot, right? Or else he'd have to be a huge idiot not to know what was happening.
So Sisko goes back to New Orleans to meet up with Odo at the restaurant. I guess he's just beaming back and forth all day between
Yeah, it's
San
fine.
Francisco and New Orleans. You'd think that would like leave some kind of record trail or something, but
Well, I'm sure it did. That's why like Leighton shows up where he is or whatever.
true.
Or I wonder if Earth like overall is like a starship where you can just be like, "Hey, computer, where's so and so?" and then it tells you where they are, so that you can go and find them.
Maybe you have to like be on each other's friend lists or something first, but yeah.
1 second. Computer, stop. I said the word and it started playing something or other.
Oh my gosh. Odo wonders if Cadet Shepard's commanding officers might have been changelings. But Sisko points out it makes no sense because the whole thing seems to go against the Dominion's goals. And there has been no invasion. Sisko worries about turning against his friends, but Odo points out that these people have committed treason, and they have turned against him.
Yeah. It's a good Odo speech, honestly.
Yeah.
Although, once again, you feel like Odo should like be on board with the idea here.
Yeah, that's true. Remember, Odo is the guy who wishes he had security cameras in everybody's bedroom, so a little bit of a reversal for Odo, but they go to Jerushinyo's office and they lay out their theory. So their theory is that after Leighton's repeated attempts to get what he thought were necessary security measures into place, he finally snapped after the Antwerp attack and staged the power grid attack to get what he wants. However, their theory is that the Antwerp attack was the impetus, but we later learn that he must have been planning this since before then, since the wormhole shenanigans were happening before the attack.
Yep.
But they made the best with the information they had at the time. Jerushinyo is unconvinced and wants proof. So Sisko tells him to order Leighton to withdraw the security troops and just see how he responds to that. He's not going to do it. But the president doesn't want to do that since the public is now overwhelmingly in favor of the security measures. So Sisko and Odo say that they'll go get some evidence, and they head back to the restaurant.
Really, this episode starts to make me see a little more of what they were talking about in the notes on the last one, where people are like, yeah, Jerushinyo doesn't seem like a very strong leader. And I'm like, he kind of doesn't, where he's just like, I don't know. I mean, I agree with wanting evidence, but at the same time, it's like, you can see what's happening, right?
Right.
And he's just like, but the public is totally in favor of this. If I tried to stop it now, then like they'd kick me out.
Right.
Like, okay, well that's some weak leader talk right there.
Yeah, he's a little too concerned with public perception. But so back at the restaurant, Nog shows up and reports that Red Squad has vanished. And then Admiral Leighton comes in and says sinisterly that Red Squad will be away from Earth for some time. Leighton sits down for coffee and reminds Sisko of a time during the Zenkethi War. So remember that? The war that was mentioned in one other episode that Sisko apparently fought in. When Sisko didn't agree with his orders, but he followed them all the same, and it turned out that Leighton was right. But Sisko says he can't follow orders this time. And then Leighton fires Sisko from being in charge of Earth security. He's just like, go back to Deep Space Nine. Then Sisko goes back to Starfleet Academy and then goes outside for some late night brooding, or Starfleet headquarters or whatever.
Yeah, wherever.
And he is joined by Chief O'Brien.
What?
It's immediately obvious that O'Brien is a changeling.
He's a very sassy changeling, too.
Right. And he basically does nothing but say, ha ha, can't catch us. So we're out here messing stuff up and you can't do anything about it.
He wanted to have a nice chat and go get a drink or whatever, and Sisko's like, nah, I'm not going to hang out with you, despite the fact that might give me opportunity to, like, draw out information about your plans and what have you.
Mm-hmm.
You just say what you want to say and leave. I really don't think it's the best approach from a intelligence gathering perspective, but...
Yeah, I don't know what he's trying to do, but he claims there's 4 changelings on Earth. Who know? I would not tell the real number of changelings on Earth, but
well, he didn't even really say that that's how many there are. He goes, "What if I told you that this was how?" It's like a lawyer trick where it's like, "I'm not saying that's a thing. I'm saying, what if I told you that was a thing? How would you feel about that?"
I mean, he seems to be pretty much saying it because he's like, with just 4 changelings, we did all this stuff.
Yeah.
But actually, Admiral Leighton did all the stuff. So as far as I can tell, they haven't actually done anything. But
they blew up Antwerp.
Oh yeah, that's true. If they even did that.
There was coincidentally a changeling at that meeting as a vase right before the bomb blew up.
I mean, I was wondering if that security footage was doctored or something, because they can apparently also fake a changeling blood test, so...
Yeah, I don't know how everybody keeps managing that.
Yeah. But apparently Sisko's annoyed, so he beams back to the restaurant to do some more brooding there.
Freaking changelings interrupting my brooding. I gotta find a new spot now.
He's interrupted by his dad, who reminds him of the girl he used to like, but he would just brood about her until he finally went and asked her out. So he's like, stop brooding and take some decisive action.
That decisive action didn't work at all, but just do it. It's fine.
Right, but I mean, he learned his lesson, and the next girl turned out to be his girlfriend, so...
Yep.
And his dad wonders whatever happened to her. So Sisko calls Kira on a Bajoran frequency, so I guess nobody's watching those Bajoran frequencies.
Like, the entire galaxy has those, like, sectioned off as these belong to the Bajorans.
Right. And just don't even look at those frequencies.
Yeah, it's fine.
Kira reports that the wormhole is back to normal. And then Sisko's like, okay, here's my secret plan. And then we fade away.
It's the only section of the episode that it takes place on the station in any way.
Yes. So Sisko and Odo head back to his office and use Odo's hacking skills that he learned from Quark to compile a list of latent loyal officers who are now in key positions.
Yeah, this was in the notes from the last episode, and I read it not realizing that we didn't actually hear it until this episode.
Oh.
Because it was like, those are the guys that are all, like, their names are all from Catch 21 or whatever.
Oh, sure. Okay, yeah. And they find that a new round of transfers of these officers is set to take place on the 14th, the day before the president is scheduled to make a big speech.
About something. I don't know that it's mentioned what the speech is.
Yes, isn't that the day before the president's big speech? Then they are interrupted by Benteen, who has now been promoted to captain of the Lakota, effective on the 14th.
Which the Lakota's still the only ship around, apparently, so
right.
That's the only one she can be captain of.
And it's effective on the 14th, even though, I don't know, does the later stuff happen on the 14th? I'm not sure.
I guess it must. Like, that's the only way that it makes sense.
But Sisko's like, I might just take some vacation time and hang around until then.
And she's like, uh-oh. There's a note in here that we know that she played Leia Brahms. We talked about that.
Right.
But apparently she was also being considered for the role of Catherine Janeway before Kate Mulgrew was cast.
Oh, interesting. I mean, Voyager has already started by this point.
Right, so yeah, it was before this, for sure.
Oh, yeah. That could have been interesting. So Sisko goes to the president's office to deliver his findings, but Leighton and Benteen are already there and ambush him with a bogus shapeshifter test.
And see, this is the president being a really weak leader, where he's just like, I immediately believe this and have no problem with the fact that, like, the people with the most to gain from this are the ones administering the test.
Right.
Also, Sisko doesn't say anything because he's just like, oh, clearly I've already lost.
Yeah.
When I would have been like, okay, yeah, fine. You want to test me? I'm perfectly willing to undergo one. I would like a neutral tester with a, like, newly replicated, blood, whatever, hypo spray thingy. Like, I feel like it would be hard for anyone to argue that was an unreasonable request, but he's just like, whatever, I'm done.
Yeah. He just figures he's outplayed. Honestly, Leighton should just leave the president in place, because apparently he can be convinced of anything.
It's true.
Yeah, unlike other shapeshifters, when they are caught, he doesn't immediately shift and run away.
No.
He doesn't, like, go into Jack-in-the-Box mode and spring into the vents or anything.
But no one except Sisko and Odo here have ever seen another shapeshifter, like, being found out, so they wouldn't know that that's their typical. Also, I don't know if but every time, like, Sisko goes to meet the president, I guess the whole 2 times, the one where he goes to meet to talk about Leighton being bad, and then this time when he shows up, he's with some other guy who's, like, standing behind him. And I was like, I assume this guy is important in some way, but we never get any information about who he is or why he's there.
Yeah, could be his, like, chief of staff or something. So Sisko is taken to a holding cell where Leighton tells him he'll be free to go after he completes his plan to seize control of the Federation and eliminate the changeling threat. Sisko is not enthusiastic. Also, How are they going to feed Sisko while maintaining their story that he's a changeling?
Maybe they're just like, changelings don't need to eat, so they don't give him any food.
How are they going to explain his going to the bathroom?
Well, it's fake changeling bathroomness, obviously.
I mean, he should have just peed all over the president's desk. Honestly, that's how you prove that you're not a changeling.
That's bold. Okay, I like it.
It's like, I'm a changeling, am I? How about this?
I like the idea that like after Leighton has taken over the Federation or whatever and declared, like this military dictatorship, which he's like, no, it's not a dictatorship, and Sisko's like, it kind of is,
right?
But like the idea is that like once that's all in place, I'll let you out, and you'll just go right back to running Deep Space Nine and not try to fight me at that point. Like I don't know what he thinks is going to happen.
Yeah, that seems unlikely. Yeah, he's like, overthrowing the democratically elected president and then replacing him with you, who has absolute control over everything. I don't know, kind of not a good look. So later someone comes in to give everyone their blood screenings with a big blood screening cart, but something on the cart was apparently Odo, who beats up all the guards and lets out the captain. So should have phaser swept that blood cart.
This is the moment in the episode that bothers me the most. And I'm going to explain why. So this lady is walking around, presumably blood testing everybody, right? Because she's like, I've been doing this all day. So if she found a changeling, what was the plan? She's not armed because when Odo attacks, she doesn't pull a gun.
Right.
So she should have at least a couple security guys with her at all times to like shoot the changeling if it's found. It's just ridiculous that this is the plan. Like, and Sisko and Odo developed this plan apparently. So really it's on them. Yeah.
And then Odo says he was able to sneak in with his knowledge of the security procedures. So also, he's like, I realized that if they caught a changeling, they wouldn't be able to do anything. So.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we didn't think this through, I guess. Okay, so it says, when Odo rescues Sisko, he uses what appears to be a Vulcan nerve pinch.
Yep.
The reason the producers had him do this was simple. We ran out of money for the morphs, explains Robert Hewitt Wolf.
Yeah, I was like, is that the Vulcan pinch?
It's just, we had no more money, and we couldn't just have him punch a dude or whatever, so Vulcan nerve pinch.
Why not?
Oh, and apparently there's a scene in here that got deleted or was just unfilmed where Jake and Joseph leave Earth and go to Mars.
I mean, why?
Well, there's an episode, or there's a point in the episode where when the conspiracy is becoming realized, Sisko's like, oh, I got to get Jake and my dad out of here.
Okay. Go to Mars. That's far out of the reach of Starfleet. So Odo also reports that they caught the person at Deep Space Nine who was messing with the wormhole.
It was some guy.
Lieutenant Arriaga. Not to be confused with Arriaga 2 or Bariaga.
Sure.
And yeah, we never see this Arriaga guy the whole episode. Sisko goes to Leighton's office and confronts him with a phaser and tells them that Arriaga is on his way on the Defiant to admit the whole plan. And Leighton is like, nope. I sent the Lakota to stop them and told them the whole ship is now shapeshifters and to blow it up. And sure enough, the Lakota intercepts the Defiant and attacks.
And in some very hand-wavy moment here, it's like, oh yeah, this Excelsior-class ship can stand up to the Defiant. Like, the Excelsior-class is so old, and the Defiant is, like, designed for combat. And it's like, well, they upgraded the weapons on the Excelsior-class and didn't tell anyone.
Right.
Or on this particular one. And I'm just like, oh, come on, that's...
And there's a great moment when, like, all the main characters are like, what do? We can't, like, fight a Federation ship. And then Worf is like, we fight.
Yeah, Worf is like, hell yes, I can.
Which I thought was cool because it kind of shows what he adds to the cast.
Mm-hmm.
Where he's the only one in this whole situation who realizes what has to happen.
I'm pretty sure he's been in this sort of situation before on the Enterprise. So.
Oh, yeah, probably. So then they do a barrel roll and they start shooting. So when in doubt, do a barrel roll.
Yep.
While the battle unfolds, Sisko and Leighton chat about the good of the Federation and loyalty and etc. Then Benteen calls and is like, the Defiant is kind of hard to kill.
I like somebody gave it a blade of armor and didn't tell Starfleet operations. And I'm like, really? Because it's not like Sisko and O'Brien were out here like black marketing some armor to put on the Defiant. Like this would have been known.
I don't know. Maybe they were. Maybe they were like, okay, just don't tell anybody where we got this armor. Let's just keep that on the down low.
They bought some like secret illegal tech to put on. Yeah, okay.
And then, but Leighton is like, well, shoot quantum torpedoes at them. That'll blow them up. And then Sisko,
like, wait, what?
Yeah, Sisko begs her not to do that. He's like, you know those people aren't shapeshifters. What are you doing? And then back on the, apparently it will take one shot to finish off the Lakota at this point. And back on the Defiant, they're just arguing about whether or not to do that. But luckily, the Lakota power down their weapons and hail them.
The Lakota's like, wait, we don't want to die.
Right.
For no reason at this point.
Yeah, it's like, as soon as those quantum torpedoes came online, they'd be like, okay, finish them off. In Leighton's office, they get a call from Worf on the Defiant, who reports that the Lakota surrendered and they're on their way with Arriaga. And then Leighton's like, well, me and my loyal officers can still fight. And Sisko's like, I mean, who are you going to fight? Also, your most loyal officer just turned on you, so I kind of doubt that whole thing.
This is... You have to suspend disbelief somewhat that Sisko could, the imprisoned man could just walk into the head of Starfleet operations office with a gun and nobody does anything or notices for a long time. And he could just stay in there holding him hostage and there's no like contingencies or anything in place for this. But when you put all of that aside, it's a pretty good scene between these two. And Sisko is once again just like playing it really hard where he's like, don't you tell me about loyalty.
Right. I think it's also kind of weird that Leighton thinks that the phone call from the Defiant is what will give him away.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's, now they know you're in here. Well, did you not have somebody outside your office who like screens people before they walk in? Like, I don't know.
I'm just trying to figure out how he thinks this will give them away. Like, is the person at the switchboard being like, wait, a call from the Defiant?
Well, it was a call for, like, that he puts through. It's like, it's specifically, they want to talk to Captain Sisko. And he's like, okay, put him through. True. And Sisko has very publicly been arrested recently, so.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, Leighton realizes it's over. He takes off his Admiral thingies and just walks out, which Sisko probably should have followed him.
Yeah.
And made sure he didn't do anything sneaky.
Who knows where he's going to go and what he's going to do at that point.
I mean, we're out of time now, so the episode just has to be over. Back in New Orleans, Joe Sisko watches the armed troops beam away. And then Sisko, Jake, and Odo say their goodbye and beam away. And then Joe welcomes in his customers and recommends the spicy pasta or whatever. The end.
So at this point, I have to mention a funny thing about my personal experience with this episode.
Okay.
So, like, when we talked about before, when these episodes were airing, I never like watched from beginning to end, basically. I would just catch some stuff. And I think towards the end of the series, I was watching regularly. But for most of the series, I wasn't. I was just, I got pieces of it. And then in reruns, I would pick up pieces here and there. So the first time actually watching the series from start to finish was when I was in college. And DVDs were very expensive for whole seasons of shows in the early 2000s. But with Deep Space Nine and Babylon 5, I found a loophole, not even loophole. I discovered that there were like super cheap Chinese bootlegs of these seasons available on eBay.
So yes, I remember you having these. I remember you having these DVDs.
So instead of the $100 per season, it was like $20 per season, and so I could afford to buy those. And like over a period of time, I bought those. So one of the many problems with the Chinese knockoffs was that every once in a while, the last episode on a disc would end a little bit early. Like they ran out of room. And most of the time it was like the credits would start and then it would cut off. Or maybe you'd lose a few seconds at the end of an episode, but the episode's over by the last few seconds. It's not really a big deal. This episode was the last episode on the disc, and it was the biggest like missing piece where the episode stops in the middle of like the big final scene between Sisko and Leighton before Leighton gives up. And so it just like cuts off. And I was like, wait a second. What the? And so there were many years, obviously before streaming, where I had no way to view the end of this episode. And I was like, I don't know. I don't remember what happens.
Other than paying full price for it.
Well, I mean, yeah, if I wanted to go out and buy the DVDs and pay, $100 for that one season, for that one, like 2 minutes of an episode that I missed, that wasn't going to happen. I do own the actual, official release DVDs of this series now, but
sure. Yeah, I mean, this reminds me of when I was a kid. It didn't happen to me so much on this show, Because when I was watching this show, that's when it was coming on at like 2 in the morning every day, and they would show like 2 episodes at once. So I would just get like a big like SLP tape and record all of them and watch them all at once.
Nice.
And it was like they would alternate. It was like they would do the full run of Deep Space Nine, then they would do like the full run of Next Generation, then they'd like switch back to Deep Space Nine. But like, so like on Next Generation, because I would catch Next Generation reruns all the time on like TV and stuff. And just like on the cartoons I would watch as a kid, it was like Escape from the House of the Mummies Part 2. Where you would never see the entire like multi-episode arc at once. You would always either catch part 1 and then you'd either like miss part 2 the next day, or like they just would air a different random episode the next day or something.
That kind of thing did happen.
Or sometimes they would show part 2 but you didn't see part 1, so you're like, wait, what happened in part 1? So I feel like that's a pretty I don't want to say universal experience of watching TV in the 90s, but it's pretty common for me. And like that happened on lots of shows, like because lots of shows did 2-parters back then.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I mean, now that you mentioned that, I'm remembering that like I would record Next Generation episodes when it was in reruns, and it would like rerun twice a day, and so I had my VCR set to record both episodes, but like, I don't know if they were just showing random episodes, or I don't remember if they were random episodes, or if it was like one time of the day was like running an order and the other time of the day was running a different like section. Like one of them would be on season 1 and one of them would be on season 4 or something. And so I'd end up with like a tape with like a season 2 episode and a season 5 episode back to back for some reason.
I got to see if I can find my tapes, because I had a bunch of tapes. Like, I remember I would try to collect as many Simpsons episodes as I could.
Nice.
So I had a bunch of tapes just of Simpsons episodes that I would record. And then, stuff that was showing during school or like at night when I was sleeping or something, I would like have tapes to record those. I was very good at programming my like little 13-inch TV VCR thing.
Yep.
To record all the stuff I wanted. And you always made sure to start the recording like 2 minutes early and then stop it like 2 minutes late.
Yep. You had to do that or you were going to miss some stuff.
Because the clock would never be lined up exactly right.
Yeah, and stuff wouldn't necessarily start like or end exactly where it was supposed to either. So yeah, you got to make an allowance.
Yep. Those were fun days. The kids these days just don't know how fun it was.
Interestingly, in the expanded universe stuff, Leighton is a very popular character to show up randomly or be mentioned randomly in other places. But one of the things about him is that like his first name doesn't seem to have been agreed on. So like he shows up all these different places with different first names. Like there's one book where he's Robert and one book where he's Rodney and one book where he's Thomas Leighton. And so it's just, it's kind of an odd.
So it's like Stevens.
So let's see. The Hollow Men is one book. And in the Hollow Men, I guess like Stevens, now you mentioned that. So in the Hollow Men, it reveals that Leighton was sentenced to 5 years imprisonment in the New Zealand penal settlement for his crimes. But in 2374, he receives a visit from Benjamin Sisko following the events of In the Pale Moonlight. So I guess Sisko is like feeling a little bit differently about, the lengths that you will go to keep the Federation safe at that point. But so in that one, he's James. But in another novel, The Poisoned Chalice, he's Robert. And then in the Decipher RPG module Starships, he is Thomas. Huh. While the autobiography of Jean-Luc Picard calls him Rodney Leighton.
Huh.
So yeah, he's just popping up all over.
Interesting. Yeah, I actually forgot to note when I was watching the episode, because I was just watching the episode, not taking notes. I was like, I got to remember to talk about like how this episode compares with, say, In the Pale Moonlight. But I guess that's better talked about when that episode happens.
Probably. You don't want to spoil any of that.
Which we will totally forget about 100%. This episode by then. My one question I have in the notes is, what was the Leighton founder doing? Or what are the founders doing in general? Like, is this a situation where they were secretly orchestrating this whole thing? Like in the Dice cast?
That's what I kept thinking was like, especially the way that like O'Brien founder claims credit. I was just like, they must have been like, secretly messing with Leighton and like making him more suspicious by like feeding him specific information or something to get him to like take this step.
I mean, from the founder's point of view, I mean, they might not be aware of any of the internal stuff going on.
Yeah.
They might just think, oh, we did this terror attack and now everybody's like crazy and paranoid or something.
It could be.
So it's just them declaring victory. But yeah, when you're right, when he talks, it kind of makes it sound like they're doing some other sneaky stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay. In the novel Articles of the Federation, this is pointed out as like, this like proves to the public basically that Jerish Inyo is like too easily persuaded when he like Leighton tricks him into declaring martial law. So he gets defeated after only one term as president by Federation Counselor Min Zeif of Bolaris, who favors a more militant stance against the Dominion.
So basically, like Federation Churchill takes over.
Yeah, essentially.
After this.
And then in Star Trek Myriad Universes, which is like a kind of like an otherworld series of novels, basically, the novel A Gutted World is set in an alternate timeline in which Cardassians never leave Bajor and the wormholes never discovered. In this book, Leighton serves as commander of the fleet that defends Earth from the Borg in the Battle of Sector 001, and he's later killed in action.
Huh.
So he gets a more heroic ending there, I suppose.
Wait, so like is this supposed to be the Borg invasion that happens in First Contact?
Yes, that's the Battle of Sector 001.
Okay.
I mean, and we know that the admiral in charge of that like does get killed, so it kind of makes sense that if he took his place, he would have ended up in the same place.
True. Or the admiral's ship got destroyed.
Well, okay, yeah, we don't know for sure that admiral is dead. That's a good point. Let's see. He also appears in the Pocket Next Generation. I'm sorry, mentioned but does not appear in the novel Available Light, where Leighton is released from prison and fades into obscurity, refusing repeated requests for interviews by 2386 Federation Attorney General Philippa Louvois, who I think is that lady that we saw in Next Generation, had no idea where he was and decided to track him down. Yeah, that's the lady from the Is Data like able to be sentient or whatever episode of Next Generation.
Does she track him down?
It says that she decides to track him down. It doesn't mention anything else, so I don't know.
So I'm going to track him down. The end.
And then he is also mentioned in Star Trek Online novelization The Needs of the Many, where Jake Sisko talks of a traitor from the recent Undine War and people committing treason in the name of saving the Federation. I guess he brings this guy up.
So there's a novelization of Star Trek Online?
I think it's a specific storyline from Star Trek Online, but yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, he's all over the place.
Sure. I mean, yeah, he's unlike Munoz or whatever. he's a little bit more of a memorable character to put into a book.
Yep, I would think so. Let's see. So this episode it notes is similar to the original concept for the Next Generation episode Conspiracy, because the original script wasn't about like alien parasites. It was just a military coup within Starfleet.
Oh.
And I think probably in the Next Generation era, that kind of thing was not going to fly.
Sure. I mean, also you just always got to have aliens, like alien brain parasites or whatever, brain slugs.
Yeah. Although it's impossible to make them out, outside Starfleet Command are a number of statues of famous starships, including the original USS Enterprise. Production designer Hans Zimmerman used Galoob toys for the statues.
Ooh.
Yep.
Galoob. I did actually try to pause the establishing shot of Starfleet headquarters or whatever, trying to figure it out, because like there's like officers walking around all over the place.
Yeah.
But also there's a big thing that I'm pretty sure is not there in real, like a big part of the building.
Yeah.
So I was like, man, that must, cleverly matte painting onto the building, I guess. The real building, because you can tell part of the building is also the real building.
Right. Yeah, gotta add some stuff to sci-fi it up a little bit.
It's like in RoboCop, how OCP is Dallas City Hall, but they put this big like extra part of the building on top of
it. Yeah,
yeah.
Irish Stephen Bear comments, "I did quite like the Oliver Stone salute scene with the shapeshifter." Column said, "I have a take on this. I hope you like it. It was quite the odd little shapeshifter, and he had some fun with it. The whole scene was really nicely done." So apparently they liked the O'Brien shapeshifter scene.
Sure.
I still think it was a little bit like it felt like a weird acting choice, but apparently
Right.
they were having fun with it. So
Sassy shapeshifter.
yep. And the last note I have here is after the episode airs, Ira Steven Behr put a note, pinned it to his office wall that said, "Remember Paradise Lost." The reason, Behr explains, is to remind me how we screwed up. As with Homefront, Behr blames a lack of money, but in this case the problems created by budgetary constraints were far more important than in the first episode. We cut down on opticals on the final space scene, which was a mistake, and we cut down on extras in terms of showing occupying Starfleet force on the streets of Earth. To this day, I just can't tell you how aggravated it makes me. It just drives me crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this is because of budget or whatever, but that's maybe my main complaint about the episode, is that it never feels like anything actually bad is happening. It's like we see a few troops walking on the streets and everybody has to submit to blood tests every once in a while. But otherwise, I don't get the sense that life is in any way disrupted on Earth.
Yeah, and the troops all seem, very friendly, like Sisko's inviting them in to have dinner
Right.
or whatever. It was like if you saw a scene, kind of like that earlier scene where it's like the guys are trying to get a blood sample and he's refusing. Like if you saw a scene where like they're having to accost people or be forceful in some way to do whatever their duty is, then you would feel like, oh man, things are going bad here. But as it is, everyone is just like happy to go along.
Right.
And like apparently, according to Jerushinio, it's like everyone feels more safe and happy right now. And it's not, we're not shown any freedoms that they're really giving up against their will or anything. Like Sisko is like, oh yeah, I'm willing to give blood samples now, but he's not upset about it.
Right.
So,
because I mean, that's literally the most inconvenient part about it, is having to give up blood samples. And I begin to wonder, like, you can only give up so much blood.
Yeah, I was wondering myself how often they do this.
But yeah, so basically just, I noted maybe we're supposed to assume it's a slippery slope from here to full-on Gestapo, or that we're supposed to assume that measures will get much worse when Leighton takes over, or something like that. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, we don't see a bunch of civil rights that they're being forced to give up. So yeah, I'm just like, I don't...
Yeah. So anyway, ready to jump into title ratings?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I'm going to say the title seems a little exaggerated based on that complaint we just had.
That's true. But I think it, whether or not they hit what they were aiming for, I think the title goes with the idea behind the episode.
Yeah. I mean, you can definitely tell what they're going for with the episode. Yeah. This whole personal freedoms versus security argument, which after 9/11, I'm sure Ira Steven Behr was very self-congratulatory about this episode.
We knew what was coming.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and it's even a callback to like the big speech in the Maquis about like it's easy to be a saint in paradise
right.
and blah blah blah. So I think that the title is actually very appropriate. Now,
sure,
it's a different argument whether or not they like hit the mark that they were aiming for.
Right. Yep. Yeah, it fits with the idea of the episode. Any falling short is really the fault of the episode itself, not the title.
Yeah. That's what I think.
Yeah. So, what do you think of the episode Paradise Lost? What do you think about the epic Milton poem Paradise Lost?
I've only read certain parts of it. It's a little too epic for me to have read the whole thing, at least remember it if I read the whole thing.
Didn't we have to read at least part of it in high school?
I was just trying to remember exactly that, because I was like, it seems like the kind of thing that we would have, but I don't remember like actually doing it.
I don't think we had to read the whole thing at the very least, because it's very long.
It's like 10 books or something, right?
Yeah. Anyway.
But yeah, so we talked about last time how the first one is a lot of setup.
Right.
And I feel like we don't pay off the setup as well as we could have and should have. Like we get the Sisko investigating and discovering the conspiracy is, I think, mostly done well. It's a little too easy because he does just keep calling people or bringing people in who are instantly tell him information
Right.
that they should in no way be willing to give up. So it doesn't feel like an investigation as much as it feels like Sisko repeatedly stumbling into stupid people that give him all the information he needs.
Mm-hmm.
So that's maybe part of it, although that's the part I have the least problem with. It after that, it's just like none of it feels like it works that well to me. I already mentioned like Sisko meeting with Gerashino and Gerashino like being unwilling to do anything without further proof. It feels a little bit thin to me, and like Gerashino is just waffling for no reason. And then I already mentioned how Sisko just giving up when he's confronted with what's clearly going to be a faked test, like not objecting in any way, like bothers me. And then we get out of jail just like so easily, and our excuse is just like, oh well, Odo knew the security measures, so he was able to easily overcome all the security problem. Like the all of the specifically designed anti-shapeshifter security, Odo's fine with it,
Right.
because he knows what it is. Which okay, and then Sisko just strolls into his office, like gets a gun and strolls into the office of the head of Starfleet security or whatever, and is just or Starfleet operations, and holds him hostage until he gives up. And it all feels too easy, and like not it doesn't feel like it justifies all of the setup for the two-parter to me. So all of that being said, I don't hate the episode or anything, and I think conceptually and in the overall story arc of like the Dominion conflict, and I feel like this is a really important episode, and or a really important pair of episodes, and they do some heavy lifting with how we feel about the threat that the founders represent.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that like the work done by these episodes is going to pay off down the line as like the story continues. So, well, I think it's weak in a lot of ways on its own. It's not like so bad overall that it's going to take it below the line for me. So it's going to like, it's like barely a lieutenant commander, but that's where I'm going to put it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, maybe they could have balanced the just what seemed to be a lot of ramping up last episode, and then what happened this episode. Maybe they could have kind of repaced out among those two episodes or whatever. But yeah, I guess so my favorite aspect is just the premise of a complex, almost Tom Clancy-esque political thriller set on Starfleet on Earth.
Yeah, I like that.
And the problem with that is it's very hard to do on a TV show.
Mm. Well, with like an episode or two. If you took a season, I bet you could do it.
Oh, yeah, sure. But yeah, like you said, it's just because there's all kinds of clues, and Sisko has to get from clue to clue to clue. So it's just like, call a guy in, guy immediately talks. Like, hack into the computers, oh, there's the information we need right there. Mm-hmm. Like, if this was a book, there'd be lots of like cat and mouse, and you call a guy in and he doesn't tell you what you want to hear, but he lets something slip that leads you to another clue, and then that kind of stuff that you can do in a book really well. And I was imagining this scene where that we didn't get in the episode, because it's pretty much like as soon as Sisko gets suspicious, he pretty much uncovers everything. I mean, we have a few scenes of him like talking to the cadet and then hacking in the computers, and then he pretty much knows the whole picture. Mm-hmm. So I was like, if it would have had a little bit more room to breathe, I was imagining this scene where like he's just started to scratch the surface of how deep this whole thing is really going, and then maybe we get a scene where he gets called into a meeting in the president's office, and he looks around, and he looks at all these faces he doesn't recognize, and he realizes any one of these guys could either be a changeling, or could be working for Leighton, or, could have their own personal agenda or whatever. And this whole thing is just like a big, like, complicated, impossible to unravel mess. And it's like, how are we ever going to get through this or whatever? So, but because it's just like a 45-minute episode, we don't get to have those kinds of moments where it's like the full weight of it can really hit you. Let's see. The Leighton character, I felt, was a little underdeveloped, mostly for the reasons we mentioned, but I felt like his performance was pretty good.
Yeah, he's pretty good at what he's doing. And going along with that, I feel like I was just thinking before you said that he was underdeveloped that we're basing a lot of the drama for Sisko's character off of this relationship that supposedly exists between him and Leighton, but we don't get enough of that to make it you actually feel it, I don't think. And if you'd had time to develop his character more, then you might have gotten that.
Yeah, absolutely. Most of the other stuff we already talked about, like I never really got the sense that Paradise was lost or was really in danger of being lost.
Mm-hmm.
But and I did like the investigation scenes, what we did get. Sisko kind of being the some of the stuff where he like tricks the cadet into talking and stuff. That stuff was kind of fun too. So overall, it does play into the Dominion arc. Overall, I feel like it is actually a better than average episode.
Okay. Especially
for what we've had so far this season. So I'm going to actually be a little bit, even though everything I said was negative and complaining, I'm still going to put it, I think I'm going to put it all the way up at Commander.
Oh, okay.
Because I think it does do a little bit of rising above, at least for what it's attempting to do. Like, it's attempting and not quite succeeding, but it's also not totally face planting.
Right,
so
sure.
I'm kind of along for the ride, so that's where I'll put it.
Okay.
Any final thoughts before we wrap it up?
No.
What do we have to look forward to on the next episode?
Preview of the next episode. Imagine the Twilight movies meets In the Line of Fire.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, how can that not be great?
Was In the Line of Fire the one with Clint Eastwood?
Yeah, Clint Eastwood.
Secret Service.
Yeah, he's a Secret Service guy. He's trying to save the president from being assassinated.
Gotcha. Interesting, man. Twilight and In the Line of Fire. Very, very intriguing. Very intriguing. But yeah, if you made it this far, thanks for listening. Don't forget to check the description. I like to put interesting stuff down there sometimes. I like to sneak Simpsons references into the episode that I can link the scene down there. So
nice.
If you caught the Simpsons reference I made, go down there and see the scene.
I did. I'm going to go down there and see the scene.
Nice. But I'm Fletcher, about to say goodbye as Data.
Adios.
Till we meet again, keep the blood wine warm and the prune juice chilled.